The ongoing media scrutiny Scott Morrison continues to receive is warranted. It's without question he's proven himself to be an aspirational tyrant who grasped the nettle of opportunity. His move to secretly take over the government was a calculated move towards tyranny, of which Australia has been fortunate not to experience yet, and hopefully never will. As a nation, Australia was born a country from the shackles of colonial imperialism, finding its way to become the most envied democracy in the world. Forget about America being the land of the brave and the free. It's Australia that's been the world's envy because of our democratic freedoms and our values, or at least that's how it was prior to COVID and Morrison's one-man assault on an unsuspecting nation. Morrison's takeover of 5 key ministerial portfolios was a step towards the beginning of tyrannical rule. And had he prevailed electorally in May, that assault would have seemingly continued. And it's not too far a stretch to suggest Morrison would have moved the pieces on the chessboard to realise his dream of a one-man government, all under the guise of pandemics manufactured for a particular purpose. As a nation, Australia, one day sooner rather than later, could have awoken to Morrison as its supreme leader. And under the cloak of secrecy lay 7 members of his gang, all complicit in what could have been an assault on Australia's freedoms and very identity. The Governor-General David Hurley, Greg Hunt, Barnaby Joyce and Matthias Cormann were all knowing culprits in that plot. They must come forward and explain their part in the secret scheme and what their thinking was. It's not good enough to sit silent, trying to excommunicate themselves from culpability. Their silence is a damning reinforcement of complicity to assist Morrison. Albanese's victory, which was an election Morrison surely thought was his, derailed Morrison's ambitions and unearthed his plots. Had Morrison's aim succeeded, then what would the other 7 have gained? The time has now come for Joyce, Hurley, Cormann and Hunt to speak up. The legalities surrounding Morrison's actions carried no illegalities. However, his Liberal colleague Karen Andrews said, "It certainly doesn't help democracy, and I am very concerned about the impacts of this going forward." Australians no longer trust the government or politicians, and Morrison's actions are a symptom of and a contribution to the erosion of democracy and that loss of trust. Just as there is an erosion in democratic rule, there also seems to be a fascinating growth in the appeal of a get things done type of leader, a man or woman that neglects the democratic processes to advance what they believe is critical. And Morrison's explanation to justify his secrecy is highlighted by his quote that reinforces that, where he said, "As Prime Minister, only I could really understand the weight of responsibility that was on my shoulders and no one else. And as a result, I took the decisions that I thought needed to take." The conduct of elected officials, particularly their integrity and transparency or lack of, actually determine the health of our democracy. When people don't see themselves represented in mainstream politics or believe politicians to be corrupt and can no longer trust institutions and leaders of government, they will either check out of their obligations or seek alternatives. And it seems Australians are now looking for those alternatives. The pandemic, as dubious as its legitimacy was, is the very example opportunists like Morrison and Victoria's Premier Daniel Andrews and other world leaders used to legitimise those opportunities to accumulate greater executive power. Andrews' continual extension for emergency powers reflects why he and Morrison are one in the same. Andrews showed no duplicity in his intent to dominate Victoria, but he can only rule Victoria. Morrison's plan was a grander one. His was sole executive rule over the nation, and to do that required secrecy and a pact. Morrison's secret ministerial appointments were evidence of a secret cabal controlling lives and COVID measures that were attempts at authoritarian control. And it's comical, but dangerous when Morrison asserts he didn't exercise those powers and there was no cause for concern. But that's a lie. Given time and the opportunity, he would have. Morrison's secret heeds a warning, and Australians now face changing and challenging political times where democracy and its very existence is under threat and attack. And Australians must toss aside their apathy towards politics and be more engaged and vigilant of who our politicians are and the character of their intent. Or one day, we could wake up to a new Australia, hijacked by forces foreign to the values and freedoms that we guard so dearly.